Asian capitalism for what it was. Strategic self-interest. How could you kill the equivalent in American terms per capita, translated from Libya, of 2 million? If this had happened in America, 2 million Americans would have been killed by a foreign Air Force bombing, not from internal rebels. This was done by NATO. The number of people killed by the rebels was insignificant compared to the total annihilation of their police and their men and women in uniform. People whose only crime was defending their nation. If this had happened in the United States, currently we would have 500,000 people being tortured simply for having supported their government. There's 8,000 people in prison being tortured in Libya now, about 100 times as many as were in the previous regime, about 80 a year. If you can go through the Amnesty International reports yourself if you don't believe me. In some years, there were only 3 or 4 cases cited of repression. That doesn't mean we know the full extent, but it certainly was nothing compared to what we've got now. We've got 100 years of Libyan torture cases occurring right now this month. This is what we've done for Libya so far. And no other, these people. Some of them could have been very well born under the 1969 revolution. Would we torture North Koreans for having supported their dear leader? Would we have armed Islamic extremists to torture the North Korean supporters? And in the case of Iran, let us take a look at a map. Here is a map. Now, Oman and Yemen are falling quickly in the U.S. orbit. I believe Oman already is. Of course, Kuwait is. I didn't list them here because this is based on recent arms sales. But if you look at Iran, Turkmenistan has American overfly rights and troops. So does Uzbekistan. We are in Afghanistan. We're in Iraq. We're in Turkey. We're in Saudi Arabia militarily. They're a proxy. Jordan, Egypt, all of these countries are client states of the United States. And now Libya. Look at Iran. It's completely surrounded. Imagine what the impact would be of an arms embargo. Of a food embargo on Iran. And in the case of Syria, entirely encircled as well. Libya has already fallen. If you were Iran, wouldn't you consider the nuclear bomb absolutely indispensable to your survival at this point? If you were the Iranian leadership, your first priority would be to secure nuclear weapons, so you would end up like North Korea and not like Libya. The main regret of Saif al-Islam was that Libya gave up their weapons of mass destruction and surrendered them to the country that then invaded them and slaughtered his family. You even issued a veiled threat just now to Assad's family. I hope our viewers noted that his family could be endangered by this. When you consider the attempt to exterminate the entire Gaddafi clan, their clan elders were murdered by the Islamic extremists we armed. 3 of the 7 children of Gaddafi were murdered by NATO. Nieces and nephews of the survivors were murdered by NATO. We bombed their television station and killed their journalists. And Saif al-Islam would, of course, be dead if the people who now hold him, the people of Zintan, did not consider him a useful bargaining chip. The man who led the effort to free the very people who lynched his father and then desecrated his corpse. The poor old deluded fool, Gaddafi, died still believing in Obama, apparently. You can also Google that. Who stood by mutely and watched the idealistic, bullying founder of modern Libya butchered by the very group who had ethnically cleansed black Africans in Tuarega, the Misrata brigades. Obama, African bombing abomination, and conducted by a repellent lying troika of Susan Rice, Hillary Clinton, and Anders Fogh Rasmussen. For me, your teeth drip with the fresh blood of Libya as you demand to sink your teeth now into the flesh of the last socialist country in Europe and the Middle East, with the exception of Algeria. Do you think double-crossing BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China, was a smart idea? Do you think they are cynical enough or foolish enough to keep allowing you to use military force instead of mutual respect and diplomacy? If you want to intervene, 7 million died in the Congo. Go there. Go to somewhere that's not full of treasure if you want to show your concern for human life. And what about here in the United States? What about the life in the United States? 20% of people that are in poverty. If you study poverty in the United States, you'll be horrified. Why don't we concern ourselves about the humanitarian issues here at home? We're having 4 times the incarcerated population of any other country in the world, other than perhaps Somalia, a country like Saudi Arabia, and one or two others. In fact, I think we have 2 million prisoners, more than anybody else, as I've mentioned many times before. Yes, it is a moment for disgust, Susan Rice. Disgust that you could be so brazen as to dare to claim moral authority in intervening in these countries. You have no moral authority. Let BRIC conduct these negotiations, not your puppets. In other words, let Brazil and Russia and India, China intervene and have talks, since they haven't invaded anybody in the last 30 years. Their teeth are not covered in blood. With Russia being a little bit more to the violent side in the last 30 years. But nonetheless, it pales in comparison to the United States. Why do you support autocrats in the Gulf, Obama, Rice, and the military-industrial complex? Because they are like heroin addicts. A little nudge from our CIA and our Pentagon and their precarious anachronistic monarchies with no basis in terms of bloodlines before World War I, when those monarchies were installed by the British after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire. They will fall easily. All you have to do is give them a little push. Such pawns, so easy to control. Answer these charges before daring to allow such words to drip from your bloodthirsty, rapacious, hungry mouth. And remember, the standard of living fell in Iraq enormously. All measures of human development fell. And in Libya, it is not forecast to recover its economy from pre-NATO bombing levels until 2018, when it had a growth rate of over 10%. You have cut their economy by 2/3. Here are 11 questions that you have not answered honestly.